right, back at it on the SuccessFlow podcast, and today we're jumping right in. Theme for today is something that keeps popping up for me, and you get so many signs. Had to bring it up to you, and you were gung-ho. So the topic is accountability and obsession. So we got a two-headed monster today. Two things that are super important when we're defining success for ourselves and how we're approaching our life. So this ties into some of the stuff we've talked in the past, but accountability is something that's circulating around the corporate world right now. It's therefore in a lot of the self-development side. You can do all the things you want and all the learning you want, but if you're not holding yourself accountable to some type of outcome, what's the point? And I know corporates struggling with this. We have a lot of employee listeners and entrepreneur listeners. So looking at it from both sides on this podcast, how do we create accountability for ourselves and for our employees or folks that we may be managing?
Yeah, I love the topic. It's definitely something that's top of mind for a lot of people, and not even business people, right? Just people looking to make change. And it goes hand in hand. When you're obsessed with something, it's the best way to hold yourself accountable, right? I mean, when you absolutely love it and you become obsessed with the routine or the habit or whatever, and you have that identity shift, like that is self-accountability. And so I think it's a great topic. And I mean, accountability doesn't exist without goals. You have to write down goals. You have to set goals. One of the things I like to talk about is setting lofty output goals. Lofty output goals, in my eyes, are goals that are 1 to 3 years out. They're not short-term goals. They're big goals. They're output. It's the goals when you achieve them is of what the world sees, right? So you're setting these lofty goals, and they're not achievable without massive action. And so in order to be accountable and hold yourself to those goals, you have to set strong input targets. And the input targets are breaking them down into quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily little targets throughout on those different timetables that will compound to achieve those lofty output goals. But they're input. They're the ones that people don't see. That's the self-accountability. Those are the targets that you are striving to achieve that no one else knows about. And it's the little incremental changes that you're working on to achieve your lofty output goals. So those are two kind of terms that I like to identify as lofty output goals, strong input targets. And that to me is how you build self-accountability. Now, one of the easiest ways for accountability is to find an accountability partner, right? So if you can do things like this podcast, for instance, you and I jumping on every single week has translated into strong accountability here to hold our end of the bargain of like, hey, we're going to show up for each other, but we're going to show up for our listeners too. And then that will translate into other areas of our life. And so that accountability partner will help you stay on track. And when you share those input targets, you don't have to share them with the world, but we can share them with each other and hold each other accountable to what we're trying to achieve. To me, that's the best way to remain accountable to the goals that you have. But you have to be compelling reasons why. You can't just make up goals for no reason. You have to be compelled and motivated on why you want to achieve these things.
Absolutely. And I think we got paired up. We kind of cheated to get them paired up as accountability partners at the end of Summit. Do you remember that? It was kind of lighting at the end, but it was like, this one's going to be not easy, but it made sense to, made sense to build off of as we headed out of Summit. And so though we've led with accountability a little bit, I want to tie in the obsession piece early because I think like you said, they're interchangeable. And if you get the obsession part out first and you choose what you're obsessed about by taking the cues and triggers from your environment, like what lights you up, what energizes you, it can solve a lot of your problems. And wanted to bring up a creator that I've become, I follow his stuff all the time, and he's literally taken the word obsessed and built a brand about it. And he's got to the point where he was trying to get down to just the letter O to see if he could get people, his audience putting the letter O is automatically triggering obsession. And one of the quotes that I shared, I believe I shared with Gento, I'm going to resend it because I like to do that. Tell them what you told them, tell them what you're going to tell them, etc. But the post that really stuck out to me and what made me follow his stuff pretty religiously in his great newsletter that I know you and I are always critiquing, this post where he said, surround yourself with relentless humans. People who plan in decades but live in moments. Train like savages but create like artists. Obsess in work, relax in life. People who know this is finite and choose to play infinite games. Find people going up mountains, climb together. And like I got goosebumps right now just reading it. Every time I read it, it gets me back on track, knowing that, you find things and problems you want to solve, and the people that you're surrounding with are either getting you closer to or kind of delaying that mission. And it just puts things into perspective for me.
Yeah, it's a great quote. Remind me, you've mentioned his name. Who's the creator you're talking about?
Zach Pograb, and we'll link to the show notes.
Yeah, I follow him as well. I couldn't. How do you pronounce his last name? I always struggle with that one.
Pograb? He's got a tough one. It's got to be Polish. Pograb.
Yeah, he definitely follow him. I mean, and that's the other thing too, is like when you're on social media, like finding the people, you have your inner circle and people here around you that you can actually shake their hand, but also, a lot of people are on social media, and finding those people that you can hold you accountable just by their demeanor and their habits and the things that they're sharing. And it may all be, sunshine and rainbows, even though it's not always real life. But at the end of the day, if you can just get the algorithms of your social media feeds to fill you up with that information, and the people that are sharing those positive and motivating and aspects of their lives, it just keeps you on track as well. It's almost like you don't want to let them down, even though they don't care or even know you exist.
I think you're spot on there. And that goes back to curating your environment, right? And the inputs. But you bring up a great point in where I wanted to take this conversation. And I would argue that we're all obsessed with something. And I think top of mind right now, this isn't a David Goggins type podcast. And you and I are fighting this day in and day out, but we're obsessed with comfort. I know that I am, and being, traveling inconveniences take us back to wanting to be comfortable. And that's the sign of a healthy brain, quite honestly. You have to be an exception to want to fight that comfort. And it's everywhere for us now. It's so easy. And if that's what you're obsessed with, which is going to be your natural default, that's where the problems can arise. Because that comfort zone is where, you start regressing. There is no staying still. And so if we can get obsessed with marginal improvements, which is the bamboo metaphor, switching that obsession from comfort to just marginal improvements, just barely outside of that 4% of out of our comfort zone, that's when the growth can happen and compound.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like on a daily basis. So comfort to me, when I think about like if I don't know if I say bored, but if I'm just like resting during the day, or I'm not doing it, like literally there's no action being taken, I'm just chilling. Like to me, I feel like that means I need to be it's almost how I hold myself accountable. It's like there's things that I can be doing. There's so much going on and wanting to create and not only professionally, but also personally, that if I'm just sitting around, I'm like, no, I got to get up and go do something. I got to go. I haven't been in the gym today. All right, now's the time I'm going to go to the gym if it's a Saturday or Sunday, right? Or I think I don't know, for me, maybe it's because of the identity shift and the habit that I've created. But once you have that obsession of the things that you're trying to do and the goals that you have and the person you want to become, if you're sitting around doing nothing during the day, that's when you have that self-motivation, that self-accountability. Like I should be doing something. Or if it's hard or I don't want to do it, that's the time to do it. Just get up and go. And I think that is how you hold yourself accountable. But it also, you have to be obsessed with those things. And so that's why this does go hand in hand. Fitness, for example, like I'm now a year in to consistent workouts 2 to 3 days a week. A year in. I've never worked out for a year straight like this on a consistent basis in my entire life. Even throughout high school and all the times I was playing sports, it wasn't this consistent. And I feel like a freaking gazelle. I'm nimble. I'm like feeling healthy. I feel great, but that doesn't happen unless I'm obsessed with the activity of getting in the gym, working out with my trainer, holding myself accountable, leveraging him as my accountability partner, whether, I pay him money. So he's like, yeah, that's cool. Like I'm making some money off of it. He doesn't probably care if I show up or not, but I think he cares. And so even if he doesn't care, I think he might care if I don't show up. So I'm going to show up. And so I'm being accountable and leveraging him. And so that has transformed my identity and my habits and the things that I want to accomplish, which when I feel good and things are going well health-wise, then I feel unstoppable in other areas of my life. And so I think that just becomes a cycle of holding yourself accountable, becoming obsessed, and leveraging other people as your accountability partners, whether they know they're accountability partners or not. They don't have to know.
I love it. I have to transition because of the timing was too perfect with the topic of this podcast. And we have some listeners in Ireland that are giving us feedback. And I got a hysterical request. It said, this is some fuel for you and Steven's podcast. And Claire Yates,
Claire's awesome,
who is a big fan of Stephen Harris because of doing
Claire.
the worm in her backyard at our wedding over there.
Oh, man, I remember
Steven's retired from doing the worm 6 times, I think, in his career, and it always seems to come out.
It comes out of retirement. Oh, that's so funny. I'll never forget that.
Claire sent me a post and said, do crackheads wake up and say, I can't get high today because I'm broke? No, they don't. Why? Because they're obsessed. They get up and they make that shit happen. So don't get out hustled by a crackhead today.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, it's so true. Like, obviously addiction is no joke. We talk about it on this podcast too. That's not the point of this. The point is we choose what we're obsessed with. And if we can get addicted to these marginal improvements, that's where I know you and I are at. Sometimes maybe we take it to an extreme, which we can talk about the dark side of obsession. But I'd rather be focusing my energy there and trying to improve. We get one shot at this brief life. Let's treat it and go after these things like a crackhead. Going after crack. That's for you, Claire. We brought it full circle.
There you go, Claire. I remember doing the worm. It was a either a very late evening or early morning, however you want to call it, after your wedding in the backyard of her house in Howth, outside of Dublin, Ireland. She's got the laundry hanging out, drying up, and a little patch of grass. And I get coaxed into doing the worm. And I'm pretty sure I was called a fucking legend.
It was great drying weather, as the Irish say. If it's a nice day over there, it's great drying weather.
I'm glad she brought that up because it's true. Like I think you're right. Addiction is no joke, but as humans, we all have the addictive personality. We're all going to be addicted to something, and if we can point it towards the direction of positive change in our lives as opposed to negative change in our lives that drags us down, it's hard, right? I mean, it's a real struggle. I've got family that's gone through addiction. I've got all sorts of different things. And, I feel like personally, I was going down a road similar to that, in my early 30s and mid 30s. And it's like, you got to make that change and you got to figure out what does the rest of my life look like? And then you become addicted to the change that you want as opposed to the things that you're used to. And so when you can make that shift and leverage the people around you, you have to audit personal relationships as well there, right? And you got to look at who's 100%. Around you and who's motivating you and inspiring you. And if they're not, then you might want to make some changes there too. But anyway, to the point of we all are addicted to something, and we can easily be addicted to something. Scrolling our phones on Instagram is an addiction, right? If you're spending hours a day doing that. So making those changes to the positives, getting addicted to the changes that you want to make of where you want to go, what does the rest of your life look like? That's the point of becoming obsessed to the good things in your life. But as you mentioned, there is a dark side. Like, are you spending so much time working on yourself that you're disregarding the people around you that love you, right? And so you have to find the balance. And I'm going to find the early morning time to focus on myself because the rest of the day it's going to be focused on everyone else. And how do I become the best version of myself to make a positive impact on others? I think that's what life is all about. And it's not solely that's when it becomes selfish, is when you don't care about anybody else and it's only you.
Kind of now swinging back to the accountability portion, which I love the bob and weave here, is the accountability piece is what harnesses in that obsession. It's taking a look from a third eye view of, okay, let me remove my emotions and self from where I'm at, what I want to do, and look from a third perspective of, okay, do the actions add up? Are we on track? And I know from a corporate perspective, I wanted to take some time to look at from an employee as a sales professional. We tend to use KPIs quite a bit, as well as the qualitative data on how those, meetings, interactions are going. And we track KPIs. So quality meetings, number of outreaches to get to the meeting, which I'll argue that there's definitely a qualitative message there, and it's not just activity for activity. But did we set up and are we progressing along a process to get to the outcome of a mutual partnership and a contract where we can help transform our customer's business? So we can have these metrics and KPIs for ourselves too. It's simple as a habit tracker in a notebook. I love that as the old-fashioned way to go. Pen to paper. These are the 5 things I've identified. Here are the number of days in a month. X. 8 clean whole foods today. Workout. X. Meditation. X. All of the above. And then you have a running track record of where your tallies are. That's just one example, but we've got to track and have KPIs for some of this. And I know from an employee and individual contributor perspective, the KPIs can be a little bit of a frustration, but that's the mission that you signed up for on a business, to make sure that we're executing on what we need to do to achieve the mission that was set up by the leaders of the organization. And so I love your perspective from an entrepreneur's perspective, and you, a leader of people, on how you approach accountability.
Yeah, I mean, KPIs, key performance indicators, they're crucial to running a successful business. And, as you stated, employees or team members might look at it as micromanagement in a way. They don't want to be tracked and all of that. And that can be a challenge for sure. But it's when you can share the vision really well within your organization, and your team has buy-in to where the organization's going, and it's all about them and their success. And when they succeed, the whole entire organization succeed. When everyone buys into that, the KPIs are much easier to implement. And so, from a sales perspective, it's easy. Like, just this number of dials to this number of meetings to this number of closes gets you X number of dollars in your pocket from a financial gain. If you have personal goals of making X number of dollars as a salesperson, well, let's build some KPIs around how to perform at a high level to get you to those goals. Now, personally, that means a lot to that person, but as an organization, that also means driving revenue and building business and continued growth and investing back in the team. And that's something that we talk about a lot, is investing back in the team. There are other businesses that, may not invest back in their team. So you just kind of look at, which organization you feel best working at and being employed at. And so from my perspective as a leader, we always share the vision and want to explain where it is that we're going. How can we help you achieve your personal goals that also align with everyone's professional goals and working as a team? So KPIs help visualize that, because then you can hold people accountable. They can hold you accountable as well. And so, like, for instance, we do quarterly meetings and go through the State of the Union of, where we're at as a business. And we talk about our 90-day rocks. And 90-day rocks are basically goals. It's an EOS thing, Entrepreneur Operating System, a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. My whole team's read it. I've read it a couple of times. But 90-day rocks are, visualize a vase, and you've got this vase, it's about this big, and you've got 3 types of rock. You've got the big rocks, you've got your, not boulders, but something that would fit in the vase. And then you've got your gravel, and then you've got your sand. And so if you focus on the sand is your everyday distractions, your phone dings, emails pop in, all sorts of distractions that you have. If you focus on the sand, you pour that into the vase. And then you've got your gravel. And your gravel are just your tasks, your weekly tasks, your daily tasks, the things that you need to get done. And so then you pour in your gravel and you're focused on that. And then your rocks are the big goals, the top priorities, the things that have to get done in order to move the needle for yourself personally and professionally and the organization whatsoever. And then you put the rocks on top. Well, now you have no more room, right? And so it overflows. You can't fit all the rocks in the vase if the sand is coming first. So the visual is focus on your 90-day priorities. Build KPIs around that, so you know that you're hitting those targets, right? The strong input targets. Then the gravel comes in. What are my weekly tasks to break that down? And then all of the distractions and all the other things can filter in and out through the grooves of that base. And so that's how we leverage KPIs and build those. Everyone has 2 professional rocks every quarter and a personal rock every quarter. We're big into becoming personal development, becoming the best versions of ourselves that would translate well into our professional life. But I think you nailed it earlier when you mentioned tracking the progress. I think many of us come up with goals and come up with KPIs and come up with things. And if you're not actually tracking them, you don't have that visualization. And you see those little rewards, like rewarding yourself as you incrementally, you don't see those on a daily basis. But if you were to track every week and you make those X's every day, in 30 days, you're going to look at them like, holy shit, that whole calendar is filled up with X's. That's pretty cool. I'm going to keep this thing going. And so I've got the Summit to Summit challenge that we have from Junto at 210 workouts and from August to August, which is an average about 4 a week. And I've got my chart. I built like an Excel sheet of 7 boxes all the way down for, was that 7 to 21, 30 weeks? Is that right? Something like that. And so I have dates in each box of my workouts. And as it gets closer, I'm more than halfway there because we're more than halfway to Summit, and I can see my progress. And I just want to fill that whole entire grid. And so just building those little things for yourself is a lot of fun, and keeps you accountable because you can visually see the progress.
I think I just ended on this note. I think when accountability is present, people keep their eyes on a very clear prize. If there's no accountability, people spend a lot of time hoping things work out. And it's good to have hope. It's good to have faith in your abilities and that you're doing the right things that'll work out. But it's the accountability, both internal and external, that is going to keep you on track and keep you from the oscillation of the highs and lows, the valleys of despair. It's that accountability that keeps you moving in the right direction. So if you're looking for help with that, we're working on events, the both of us, and programs that can help you kind of keep on that path. So reach out to this thread and we'll figure out how we can help and support.
Real quick before we end, you mentioned hope, and my dad had just brought up a quote that he had on his whiteboard. So he had one of those massive whiteboards in his home office growing up when I was a kid. And he'd have 10 or 12 quotes that just were always up there. And one of the ones that was up there was, hope is for those who don't know. And while that's true, and everyone, it's important to have hope, but you're hoping for something because you don't know the result. And so I think we can trick ourselves to know by setting up those visual aspects of I know that I'm going to get my workout in today. I know that I'm going to work on this today. So I don't have to hope that I'm going to reach this goal. I know I'm going to reach it because I can see that. And I can see that progress between the accountability that I've done for myself and leveraging other people around me. So it just reminded me of one of the Bill Harrisisms that I grew up with, seeing all those different types of quotes. And that's just a good memory for sure, bringing that up.
I remember the one that he had up in Master Text that really stuck with me because it was up there every day and being in and out of his office most days was just, my goal for you is to be an asset to society.
I live by that.
Which is what we're trying to do right here and right now.
Exactly. I mean, that's literally that is the vision. That is the foundation of everything that I try to do. That was always instilled in me, and it's been instilled with you. And that's what it's all about. Just be a good human being, be an asset to society.
Amen. That's the pod. We'll be back at you next week.